Well, hello again, and welcome again to another reading. We're going through Every Name for God in the Bible by Larry Richards, read by myself, Irving Resch. We're going to be in chapter 1 yet. We're going to be in section 5, Evolution and Religion. I'm just going to start our slide here. So, evolution and religion. Data from all over the world suggests that human beings retain knowledge of God, but have persistently sought to distance themselves from Him. This distance takes several forms. One strategy is reflected in the story of a high God who is unintentionally in His creation. God exists in knowledge, but He has become irrelevant. Now, the third strategy make gods in man's image. Now, most educated people are somewhat familiar with the Parathon of Greek in Rome. Here, Zeus is held up as the father of the gods in a literal sense, a mythological record in the works of Homer and others described relationships between the gods in human family terms. We, husbands and wives, are offsprings, while the gods are more powerful than human beings. They motivate and passions. There lies the sexual illusion reflected what is worst in human society. Now, while the gods may take an interest in human affairs, their interest is fleeting and their adversary human beings vulnerable to becoming pawns in a games played only for the deity's benefit. Moreover, these deities created in man's image are far from all powerful. They, like human beings, are subject to fate and destiny, and they too come into existence after the material universe. Later pagan philosophers who expressed the opinion that they must be one God under reality criticized religions of Greek and Rome. But as one of these critics, Maximum of Tyre, wrote, God the Father and demulus of the what exists, older than the sun, older than the heavens, superior to time and the age of every transcendent nature, is anonymous for any legalist or infallible to vote the invisible to eye, and have no means of ostentation in nature or unto. It was, as Paul described, some cultures changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, Romans 1:23. In the process, such cultures so perverted their knowledge of God that those who realized he must exist had no notion of how to find him. Now, the fourth strategy, depersonalization God. Another strategy for distance from God appears in belief rooted in the Far East. There, the personifying God is denied, and several religions hold that whatever the ultimate reality may be, it cannot be comprehended by human beings. In describing terrorism, the religion originated in China, Volume 2, page 29, asserts that the is an ultimate mystery and inapprehendable reality, fond of the creation of the existence. Even a second Tao congests in the first cannot be apprehended. Lao Tzu says, I gaze and I see nothing. I listen and I hear nothing. I find only an undifferentiating unity, indescribable. It cannot be named. Chapter 14. A classic expression of the names of God is found in the Starza from the 21st century of Tao Te Ching. Now, there was something undifferent and yet completely would exist before heaven and earth. Sounds and formless, it depends on nothing and does not change. It operates everywhere and is free from danger. It may be considered the mother of the universe. I do not know its name. I call it Tahoe. In India, the name given that something is the knowledgeable absence in the Abraham Ward F follows in religion East and West. Note that Brahman is one of the many, is personal, is impersonal, is everything, is nothing, is red and is green, is good and is bad. It is the world of emptiness, page 92. Fellow adds the idea of an impersonal ultimate being, which is the source of being, or of the unchanged, which reminds us, remains when all else changes, and not particular to India, but the root idea has been more fully embellished and then incorporated more centrally in philosophy, Hinduism, and anywhere else, page 93. But here Hinduism goes even further. The doctrine of the Atman affirms that the human soul and the Brahman are fundamentally the same. Rather, they see human beings as separated from the subordinates to God. The Hindus see himself or herself as one who's God, and thus as God's or as part of God. It is especially striking to realize that this particular Hinduism, many gods and goddesses are not gods in a biblical sense, yet the worship, praise to the rely on, but the people, that many gods and goddesses of the Hindus might coexist in the philosophical system and utterly depersonalize the true God is logically contradictory. Yet the notion that God exists while the Brahman God or others and nothing known as unknowable but essentially part of ourselves is a foundational feature of Eastern religions. Clearly, this strategy for distancing from God has successfully entrapped untold millions from China through India and Tibet. Now, Hindu mythology multiplies deities, while Hindu philosophers argue that God is indefinitely unknowable and impersonal. Now, the fifth strategy emasculates God. Old Testament faith, originally in the ancient Middle East, often called the cradle of civilization. Rites, records, that go back to about 3,000 years BC before Christ. And this part of the world gives us the first written account of religions. It is especially fascinating to see the people of Canaan develop the strategy for distancing themselves from the primary deity, who is called Elo, which is God. Now, the Caesarean Palestine, El was the head of the pantheon of deities. His name simply means God, and the Semitic language of that era. In the West, he was viewed as a personal God and called powerful, the Father the Father of gods and man and kings. According to myth, El formed the female Asher, and Ashtoreth is the two produced several divine sons. Excuse me. However, despite El's primary, he is increasingly depicted in myth as physically weak. In decisive sense, resigned. LS, Volume 1, page 151. Gradually, he is replaced by Baal, a fourth-generation deity. According to the rather multiplex text, Baal and some confederations attacked El in his place on Mount Sarpan. They wounded El, tied him up, and castrated him. In the ancient East, the multiplication excluded the person from sovereignty. Baal then carried off El's wife. She became his consort, and as the Old Testament records, was worshipped with him in the Canaanites. El was forced to seek refuge and to the end of the world. Well, the myth suggests that El begged the help of his family and promised to make the god Yam his successor, and he would drive Baal from the throne. El himself could not be dismissed. He had literally become an important deity. What do we learn from this survey of solid elements of religious around the world? First, we see that human beings truly are religious. Whatever human society is found, religion is a significant element. Secondly, we find clear evidence that religion cannot be characterized as a search for God or gods. Features of all religions suggest that they are devoid, gradually withdrawn from original assumption about the deities. Third, we find compelling evidence that the world's religions, in essence, are mechanical for distancing human beings from God. Many of man's religions typically reveal an original knowledge of God, which have been actively suppressed and corrupt. In this, we see unmistakable evidence that the accuracy of Paul's account of failed humanity declines. Although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and they changed the glory of the incorruptible God into image made like corruptible man, and birds and fowls, four-footed animals, and creeping things. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and they worshiped and served the creation rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. Romans 1, verses 21 through 23 and 25. That ends our reading for today. Bye for now.